What's up everyone, and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Dustin Poirier surmising that UFC is going to book a fourth Conor McGregor bout. It's been just over 5 months since we've last seen Dustin Poirier fight in the octagon, tapping out to a rear naked choke slapped on by lightweight champion Charles Oliveira at UFC 269. While Poirier suffered a loss in his latest title fight, the Diamond had been pretty busy in 2021, fighting and beating Conor McGregor twice. But while there was a bit of steam behind a potential clash between Poirier and Nate Diaz, that fight looks dead in the water, on account of Nate Diaz reportedly eyeing up retirement. With that, it's unclear when Poirier would finally be able to fight again. In fact, according to the Diamond, he hasn't heard anything from the promotion in a few months, though he does have a theory as to what his next move could be. Case in point, Poirier was recently answering fan questions on Twitter, and the topic of his next potential fight came up. This is what he stated: "I don't know what's going on. I haven't heard anything from anyone in the last 2 months." Then, when another fan mentioned that the UFC might be looking at making a fourth fight between him and Conor McGregor a reality, this is how the Diamond responded. "Probably so. McGregor and Poirier last fought in a trilogy bout last July, when Poirier was declared the winner by TKO at the end of the first round, on account of McGregor breaking his leg and being unable to continue. It was Poirier's second win in a row against the Irishman, who remains the biggest draw in the sport. McGregor is expected to return to the octagon later this year, although it is unclear exactly when. Still, do you want to see Poirier McGregor 4? Aljamain Sterling rips Big John McCarthy for saying he thought he lost UFC 273 fight. Since Aljamain Sterling's hand was raised following the UFC bantamweight title unification fight last weekend at UFC 273, there have been some people who came out and said that not only did they disagree with the decision, but believe that it was a robbery. One of those people is UFC President Dana White, who came out and stated after the fight that he scored it for Yan, but he didn't take anything away from Sterling and said he'd be up for matching him up against TJ Dillashaw for his first official title defense next. Another person who scored the fight for Yan was Big John McCarthy. Big John, the former UFC referee, in a recent episode of his Weighing In podcast with Josh Thompson, said that it's all about that first round, how you score that opening round. That would really tell the difference, and for him, Peter Yan did more to win the first round, and subsequently the fight. Well, just a day after the podcast dropped, Sterling appeared on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani, and spoke at length about the fight, the first round, and then he called out Big John. This is what he stated with regards to Big John during the interview.
There's absolutely no way you can score that round, big stupid John McCarthy voice. Dude, go get a clue. I don't know how this guy was ever the blueprint standard of MMA, because that guy sucks. His opinion stinks and it sucks. He just says and I think he just wants people to think that he knows what he's talking about. Like,
Sterling goes on to talk about how he won the first round and mentions how his striking has been more effective in the opening round, how he dictated where that round would go, and how he landed more kicks, despite Yan seemingly more aggressive. But what do you think about Sterling's comments about Big John? 3 names on Gilbert Burns' shortlist of possible opponents. Despite having lost a unanimous decision last weekend against Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 273, Gilbert Burns wants to stay incredibly active and is still on the warpath for a welterweight title shot. The Brazilian gave Khamzat a run for his money during the welterweight fight last Saturday in Florida, giving Khamzat his stiffest test to date and giving fans an incredible show in the process. Despite showing off amazing skill, ultimately it wasn't his night, but he was able to acquire some nice hefty bonuses from UFC President Dana White for his troubles last Saturday. But Burns is still focused on a potential welterweight title bout and has released a list of possible opponents whom he thinks could get him there. In a recent interview with TSN, this is what Burns stated: "To be honest with you, I really want a big fight. Losing that fight was 2 steps back, even the way it was. People giving a lot of credit, the stock is up, but I want a title fight, and I went back a little bit. I've got a few more fights. Nate Diaz's name is always on my mind. Nate or Nick, that's a fight that I've always wanted to do, but we'll see. I think maybe Jorge Masvidal, then I'll fight contenders again. I think I've earned the spot to get a big fight." Masvidal's name isn't that surprising, given that Gamebred is a former title challenger and is still a massive draw. But Nick and Nate Diaz are slightly surprising names if you think about it with regards to a title shot. Nick Diaz is reportedly in talks to potentially fight again in the UFC later this year. while Nate Diaz has been talking about hanging up the gloves after he fights his last contracted bout for the UFC whenever that happens. Who out of those three fighters would you want to see fight against Burns? Don't forget to take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to stay up to date on the latest fight news. Islam Makhachev responds to Alexander Volkanovski saying he wants to fight in the lightweight division. Not long after Alexander the Great Volkanovski demolished the Korean Zombie last weekend at UFC 273, he made comments that he would be willing to move up in weight just to remain active. Volkanovski defended his featherweight title in impressive fashion, demolishing the Zombie with incredible skill that only served to prove that he is the most complete featherweight in the world. The champion made it look easy during his UFC 273 main event. The fact that Volkanovski was even in there with the Zombie, who was 1-1 in his previous two fights, and was given this title shot due to an injury to Volkanovski's original opponent, Max Holloway, shows that there is no clear-cut number one contender in the 145-pound division. Volkanovski made it clear he wants to be able to continue defending his title, but because there's no clear number one challenger outside of perhaps Holloway, he's considering trying his hand in the 155-pound division. Don't forget, Volkanovski even fought as heavy as welterweight before he entered the UFC, so he's no stranger to fighting bigger guys. Still, while Volkanovski is eager to continue fighting, Islam Makhachev, one of the top contenders in the lightweight division, is telling him to stay put. This is what Makhachev stated in a recent tweet regarding Volkanovski's comments. "Hold your horses, cowboy. You have division full of young sharks, more than enough to stay busy. Lightweight title fight is mine." Islam is knocking on the title shot door for the 155-pound strap, but he will have to get past Beneil Dariush first, in a fight that is slated for sometime later this year. The winner of that fight will be the number one contender for the lightweight title. But if Volkanovski does want to move up, it's possible that he could skip the line and take on the winner of the upcoming Charles Oliveira-Justin Gaethje title fight. Do you want to see Alexander the Great Volkanovski fight for the lightweight title? Or do you want to see Islam or Dariush battle for the 155-pound strap? Russia's Roman Kopylov, who is on a two-fight losing streak in the UFC, he now has to withdraw from his scheduled April 23rd clash against the Beverly Hills Ninja Jordan Wright for undisclosed reasons. Canada's Marc-Andre Barriault is now stepping in to face Wright in this middleweight clash at UFC Vegas 52 next weekend. Barriault has won 2 of his last 3 fights, while Wright is on the flip side of that with 2 losses in his last 3 fights. Meanwhile, the UFC has also added a new fight to the June 18th card, as Damir Ismagulov will take on Guram Kutateladze. Ismagulov is undefeated in the UFC with 4 straight wins, all by decision, while Kutateladze will look to continue his momentum after he beat Mateusz Gamrot in his UFC debut back in October 2020. Are you excited to see these fights? And let us know who you got your money on. Kay Hansen and UFC part ways. After 4 total fights in the UFC and 3 straight losses, the UFC is parting ways with 22-year-old female strawweight Kay Hansen. Hansen had most recently fought against Piera Rodriguez in this past weekend's UFC 273 card in Jacksonville, which ended up being Hansen's last fight on her current UFC deal. Hansen lost that fight via unanimous decision after going the full 15 minutes. It's been a familiar story for Hansen, who first appeared in the UFC back in 2020. In June of that year, she made her debut against Jin Yu Frey, winning by a 3rd round armbar, but it proved to be her only win under the UFC banner. Since then, she's gone 0-3, and the UFC this week decided not to re-sign her to a new contract. What do you think about the UFC parting ways with Kay Hansen? Thanks so much for joining us today. What do you make of what's going on in the fight world? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all of the latest news from the MMA Zone. See you next time.